So, Kenan Knight with McGriff Insurance. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to talk about today.
My name is Kenan Knight. I'm with McGriff Insurance Services in Kennesaw, Georgia. I've been in insurance since I graduated college, essentially in 2006. Started on the employee benefit side. For the last about 10 years, I've been on the property and liability side. Specialize in contractors, which is how I've gotten to know Adam, doing a lot of electrical, plumbing, and HVAC folks, but drywall, masonry, you name it, kind of anything in that contractor world. So today, what we're going to talk about is workers' compensation, a huge point of emphasis for contractors, especially. Guys doing commercial jobs for GCs, it's especially a big deal because a lot of times you won't even get a look if your mod is over a 1.0 because it shows you're having issues with safety on job sites, your workers are getting hurt. And obviously that can roll uphill to a GC on a job site if things go really badly, and they don't want the delays. They don't want people getting hurt on a job site. A lot of people obviously have good relationships with their general contractors or builders that they do a lot of work for. And so they'll still get the jobs above if they have a mod above a 1.0, but usually that you've got to write letters of explanation and get into lots of detail of why your mod is above a 1.0.
Do you find that a lot of generals are requesting that in the bid documents?
Oh, everybody.
Soliciting proposals now? Okay.
Yes, everybody. You have to have it in there, what your experience mod is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say in the Atlanta market, a lot of people might work for Brassfield or Choate. If you do jobs for them all the time and you're above a 1.0, you stand a chance you're still probably going to get those jobs. But if you're bidding on with folks that you don't really know, you're just putting bids out to win jobs and you're above a 1.0, a lot of times it'll just kick you out. You may not know that,
Okay.
but you're going to put it in your RFP, what your mod is and probably what it is for the last 3 years. And you just may never get a call back.
And the mod rate is calculated. Is it injuries per 100,000 hours worked? Is that how it's calculated?
Well, we'll get into that. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. We'll cover the basics. And then, like I said, I'll send a link that explains exactly how it is if people really want to get into the weeds.
Okay.
But we'll get into some of the basics of that. So, of course, the other part of that, really what the mod is telling everyone who looks at it, so GCs, builders, potential employees, they may look at your mod, your insurance carrier, of course, your workers' comp insurance carrier is looking at the mod. That's maybe where it has the most effect. It's basically benchmarking you against other companies in your same industry, in your same region of the country, and your same size, an average size. That's what it's doing. So typically, a mod could go from, let's say, a 0.75 all the way up to, let's say, a 1.6.
Okay.
Now, I say typically because depending on the size of your business is how wide a spread that could be. So if you're a smaller company, you don't have a lot of payroll, the lowest mod you can have might be a 0.92 or 0.88.
Okay.
The bigger payroll, the bigger company, you may be able to go down into the 7s or maybe even 6s.
Okay.
So what that's really saying is a 1.0 is an average mod. That means NCCI expects you to have, let's say, $35,000 in claims in a year based on your type of business, your electrical contractor, and you have $500,000 in payroll. So based on all of their data, they said, okay, we expect you to have $35,000 in losses a year. And if you're right there at $35,000 in losses a year, your mod will be a 1.0. So they're saying, okay, you're average, you're what we expect. If you're really good, if you have a good track record, you don't have injuries, or you don't have claims, I should say, on your workers' comp experience, then it can go down below a 1.0. So let's say you have a 0.8 experience mod, a 0.80. Well, you're getting a 20% discount essentially on your workers' compensation.
Okay.
Because, most guys are going to be familiar with this. And it kind of got into what you were asking earlier, Adam. If you're with, let's say your workers' comp is with AmTrust, And AmTrust, you're an electrical contractor, AmTrust rate per 100 of payroll is $3 for simple math. So for every $100 in payroll you pay an electrician, it's going to cost you $3 in workers' compensation. That will tell you your gross workers' comp cost. So I've got 500,000 in payroll. For every $100, I'm paying $3. That's X amount. But then below that, you have what people are familiar with seeing. You have all these discounts and debits below that. Mm-hmm. So like if you have $1 million limit as opposed to a $500,000 limit, that's a very small increase, but that may cost you $300 a year. So you'll see that down below. But say you carry a deductible, that will have a discount. So maybe that discount is $3,000 a year. And then in Georgia, you can have a drug-free workplace credit. That's a 7.5% discount. So let's say that's $7,000 a year. And then your experience mod is in there. So if you have an 8.0, that's another 20% discount off that top line number. Let's say you have claims and you're at a 1.2 instead of a 20% discount, you're getting hit with a 20% debit. So, I mean, you'll see people, you'll look at their work comp schedule and they may be paying an extra $20,000, $30,000 a year because their experience mod is high.
Okay.
So it's very important to control. I mean, it's dollars to your bottom line in insurance costs, and it could also be dollars to your bottom line in not getting jobs, not getting the looks because you're above a 1.0.
It figures into the payroll calculations too. When they're doing estimating, they have to know what their actual fully burdened rate is, and workers' comp is a component of that fully burdened rate.
Correct. So a lot of times contractors will want to know what your net rate is. Mm-hmm. So that's where you take that top line, that gross number, but then you take all those debits and credits and you come up with your net rate per 100. Mm-hmm. And so if you're obviously, the lower your net rate is, the better, that helps you in bidding jobs, and putting more competitive bids in because you have more competitive work costs. And so all that stuff comes into, so the lower that net rate, even if your rate per 100 may be higher than the next guy's by 40 cents per 100 or 8 cents per 100. It's all over the board depending on carriers and all that. But if that mod's lower, then it can really help that net rate.
Okay. Now I heard you mention the drug-free workplace discount.
Yep.
I know that some states also offer what they call, I think, a hands-free auto policy where you have every employee signs a thing saying they won't talk on the phone while they're driving, or they'll use a hands-free connection like a speakerphone or a headset if they're driving. I've heard that can give a discount on workers' comp as well. Have you heard of that?
There's not a direct percentage like, hey, if you have everybody sign this, we're going to give you a 3% discount.
Okay.
But those are things you need to relay to your insurance agent so he can relay it to your underwriter with whoever you're insured with, whatever carrier you're insured with. And that will factor in. But the drug-free workplace discount is a set discount. So in Georgia, if you qualify for drug-free workplace, and I can go into what that is, it's very simple to do. You print off that little gold certificate. You pay the state of Georgia $35. You print off that gold certificate. You send it to the insurance company and you get a 7.5% discount. So if you don't have a drug-free workplace program, if you're not sending that into your insurance agent, then you're literally paying 7.5% too much for your workers' comp, period. Simple as that. It takes 20 minutes to do.
So how does that play into states where marijuana is legal?
That's a great question. And that's been an issue. And the best answer is really, it's no different than saying alcohol is legal, drinking alcohol, but you can't show up to work drunk, right? And you can't drink on the job. And I know it's a little different because, you can drink on Sunday and show up to work on Monday and be fine. Right. Nobody's testing you for alcohol. Where marijuana, you could get off work on Friday, smoke it Friday night, you get drug tested Monday and you fail, even though you're not high.
Right.
it's still in your bloodstream. If you want to be a certified drug-free workplace and you're going to drug test your employees, even if it's legal, that doesn't mean it's beneficial for your contracting company.
Are they making
So
exceptions like drug-free workplace except marijuana in those states yet? Or
no, we
is
haven't
that a
seen that.
conversation? Okay.
No, we have not seen that. And really, because it's not saying it's, morally bad or it's illegal, obviously, anymore in a lot of places. What it's saying, though, is this is all a function of a safe work environment.
Mhm.
And a guy who's smoking marijuana regularly is probably not going to contribute to a safe work environment.
True.
Not that it's necessarily bad, not that it's certainly illegal anymore in a lot of places. In Georgia specifically, to qualify for the drug-free workplace, you do not have to drug test people on any set standard. Hey, once a month, you got to drug test everybody. You have to do randoms on everybody. Basically, what you have to do to qualify is you have to do pre-employment.
Mhm.
So before you hire a guy, you have to send him to get a drug test. And you have to do post-accident. That's a law anyways, at least in the state of Georgia. So if a guy falls off a ladder, when you send him to Nova or Concentra or wherever you send your guys when they get hurt, they drug test them when they get there, period, end of story.
Mhm.
And that helps you because if the guy has drugs in his system, they throw that out. That's not a work comp claim. He's violated the work comp statutes. So you want to do that. I mean, it helps the business owner. So that's really what you have to do. And you do have to have a provision to be able to do random and suspicious drug testing, but you don't have to do it. You just have to basically have your employees sign saying you have the ability to do it. It's got to be in your handbook. But there's nobody coming around saying, hey, you have this drug-free workplace certificate. When's the last time you did a random drug test? That does not happen.
Okay.
I'll kind of start and just walk through some of the generalities of workers' comp from the very beginning. Some of the questions that I frequently get. One is, hey, do I have to have it? Most of my guys are 1099, or I don't really have very many employees. And I'll just start off by saying this is specific to the state of Georgia. Most states are very similar. Some states could differ, but for now, we're talking the state of Georgia. If you have 3 or more employees, you have to have workers' comp, even if those 3 might be part-time, they only work 20 hours a week. Let's say, Adam, you and I own an electrical contracting business together, and we have 1 other employee, but me and you exclude ourselves from workers' comp, which owners and officers have the ability to do. And you say, well, we exclude ourselves. We really only have 1 employee on, so we don't need work comp. In the state of Georgia, even if we exclude ourselves, we do count towards that count of 3.
Okay.
So if you have 3 guys that own a business together and you've got 2 guys who work for you, you still have to have work comp, even if all 3 of you exclude yourselves and only 2 guys are technically employees. For work comp, owners and officers, even if they exclude themselves, are counted. In general, what workers' comp does is it pays for medical care if you get hurt on the job, and it pays indemnity to the worker, which means essentially lost wages.
Okay.
So if I get hurt, I fall off the ladder, I break my leg, I go to the hospital, they do x-rays, they set my bone, they put me in a cast, I have 4 follow-ups, and those medical bills are $25,000. Work comp pays for that. I miss a month's worth of work, and let's say that's $6,000 in payroll. Work comp is going to pay me 2/3 of what I would have earned, and it does max at $675 per week in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
So there could be a gap there for higher earners. Work comp may not make up for all of it, and this is a different discussion for a different day. But the way to offset that, especially for your key employees or your higher earners, is to get a long-term and a short-term disability policy for them.
Okay.
Because work comp, if you got a guy making, $60, $75, $100,000 a year, and he
Mhm.
goes out on work comp, he's not going to be made whole on that work comp policy.
Okay.
But that's what workers' comp does. It'll pay for your medical bills and it'll pay wages if you miss work. And of course, ongoing care, if you gotta go to therapy and work that leg out, it'll continue to pay for that. Of course, a lot of times what we see, especially these days, are work comp settlements. A guy hurts his back, he hires an attorney, they sue you, your work comp, and you go back and forth and you settle for $50,000. That part of that settlement is almost always that guy can no longer work for you ever again, and he has no other claims against you, which is why carriers will settle that comp claim a lot of times, because he can't come back years later and say, oh, my back, now I've got a degenerative disc caused from this. I need another 100,000. Once they take that settlement, they're done.
Okay.
The first 7 days that an employee misses work, they're not getting paid for those 7 days. You can almost think of it like a big deductible for that employee.
Okay.
So
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah. So if you have a guy and he sprains his ankle, walking a job site, steps in a hole, sprains his ankle, and you say, hey man, let's go get you x-ray checked out. And they x-ray it. Hey, it's not broken, it's swollen. You need to take 2 days, ice it, elevate it, and see how you feel. Those 2 days he misses, he does not get paid by workers' comp for those days.
Do most employers pay that out of pocket then?
I would say so, or they take a sick day or PTO or whatever it has, but it depends. A lot of times the company will just pay the guy the 2 days, but again, that's all up to the employer. A lot of times they'll say, hey, look, man, I'll pay you, go home, get rested up, and I'll see you in 2 days when you feel better. So that's a great question to lead us into how your work comp mod is actually what it's made up of and how it gets set.
Okay.
So it's looking for really two things. It's looking for frequency of claims and the severity of claims. And the way that NCCI really measures that is through what's called a split point. And what that means is, in the state of Georgia, again, specifically, the split point is $18,000 of any one claim. So the first $18,000 of a claim counts against you. It's weighted at 100%. Everything above the $1,800,000, they say, okay, this is kind of a shock loss. This isn't expected. This is kind of a one-time type thing. So we're going to discount everything above 18,000 on any one claim. So what that does is, for a guy who has, let's say you have 5 $10,000 claims in 1 year, that's $50,000 in work comp claims.
Mm-hmm.
But each one of those is weighted against you at 100% because they're all below that split point of 18. They're all $10,000 claims.
Okay.
Let's say your company does that. My company, I have a $50,000 claim, but it's only one claim. One guy got hurt pretty bad. That $18,000 split point is going to protect me because only the first 18,000 of that claim gets weighted 100%. Everything above that gets discounted extremely heavily.
Okay.
So my mod is going to be lower than yours when all that gets calculated in, because I only had one claim, and that split point protected me, even though it was a severe claim. You have a frequency problem. You had 5 claims. They were all 10,000. Every single one of those claims affects you at 100% of that split point.
More indicating more of a chronic safety
A
condition.
chronic issue, correct.
As opposed to a one-time acute incident.
I had some random, something happened, guy got hurt, but it shows that my record is better than yours because I only had one claim that year. Granted, it was bad, but that's not expected. That's not going to happen every year.
Is that split point set across the board by this? All the carriers use the same split point?
NCCI, which is in 26 states, uses that split point.
Okay.
Underwriters also look at frequency versus severity. So not only is your mod going to be affected worse by the frequency, the underwriter, who also has say in, you know, how much he's going to charge you for workers' comp, which is called a schedule mod. So your NCCI or your experience mod, that's an experience mod that has a factor. And then the underwriter has what's called a schedule mod. And he's got factors he can apply to it to charge you more or less. Typically, the underwriter will stay in line with your experience. So if your experience is an 8.0, your schedule mod is probably going to be an 8.0 or pretty close.
Okay.
If your experience mod is a 1.2, your schedule mod from the underwriter is probably going to be up there around a 1.2. So it's a compounding effect. You know, that's another
Those
way.
aggregate, right? That's not,
Yeah.
that doesn't carry two. It's like one and the other. They
Correct.
accumulate. Okay.
Correct. So another reason to keep that experience down, because then the underwriter is going to follow suit for the most part. So the split point is important. You don't want frequent claims. You're going to be penalized for that, as opposed to the one-off claim that might be more severe. That split point is going to protect you. The other thing that's going to protect you is having a medical only claim. And another part to that is, as an employer, as a company, having what's called a return to work light duty program.
Okay.
So what that means in real life is, I'm an electrician. I'm out working on the job site every day. I'm pulling wire and my shoulder pops, and I cannot get my arm above my head to pull wire right now. So I go to the doctor and they say, yeah, you strained your rotator cuff. It's not torn. You don't need surgery, but you know, you do need to go to physical therapy and you need to be on light duty. You do not need to be doing any overhead work for at least the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, so what do I do for the next 2 weeks? Because that's over 7 days of work. If you have a medical only claim, so if me going to physical therapy and me getting the MRI or whatever on my shoulder is all that work comp pays, let's say that's $3,000 worth of claims. That $3,000 gets discounted by 70% when my experience mod gets calculated. If they only pay medical, if they don't pay me for missed time, whatever's paid in medical gets discounted by 70%.
Wow.
So the way to make that happen is you have to have a return to work light duty program in your handbook that all your employees sign and agree to. So I come to you and I say, hey, Adam, you're my boss, my rotator cuff, it's not torn, but I got physical therapy. I can't do anything above my head for at least 2 weeks. And then I got to get reevaluated. And you'll say, hey, Kenan, no problem. We're going to put you on light duty. Now I'll pay you your full salary, but what you're going to do is you'll just walk the job sites and kind of double check everybody's work and do things that you can do that don't require you to go overhead and pull wire.
Even come to the office and help out with estimating.
You can come to the office and help around the office.
Maybe even doing trim work, like put in switches and plugs, that kind of stuff, where you can
call let's say in today's world, we all know getting material is a problem. You can sit in the office and call suppliers and look for material, for your light duty. It can get, the larger the company and the more issues you may have with work comp claims. Some people take a very hard line on this, and your light duty may be, especially for guys who may not be your key guys, or maybe guys you think are trying to play the system. You can have them count paper clips in the office. Hey, we need to do office inventory. I need to know how many paper clip boxes we have, how many alligator clips we have, how many pens we have, and how much copier paper we have. Wow. And so you spend your days counting that. Now that does two things. You say, this stinks. I don't want to be doing, I'd rather be out working. So you don't milk that work comp claim for as long as you can. And again, what it's really doing is it's keeping you from your carrier paying the indemnity payment for him having lost time. And it's reducing that claim significantly for you.
Okay.
So a lot of times you'll see, or you'll hear these big, you see it in like factories, huge factories, and they'll have a sign out front to say 572 days, no lost time.
Right.
That doesn't mean they haven't had an injury in 572 days, or even a work comp claim in 572 days. But it means that nobody has lost time in 572 days. So if somebody gets hurt, they put them on light duty job that they can do.
Very interesting.
Right.
It's a way to maximize your benefit without impacting the company's bottom line or jacking up your rates.
100%.
Okay.
100%. So kind of as a recap so far, if you don't have the frequency, you're helping yourself because of that split point. And if you have a medical only claim, it gets reduced by 70% when it's factored into your experience mod. And the way to make sure you have mostly only medical only claims is to have a good return to work light duty program. And a lot of guys, especially smaller companies, they say, well, Kenan, I don't have any light duty for them to do. I've got one office lady and I run some of the office and all my guys are in the field. It doesn't matter. Find a light duty job for them to do. Put them in the warehouse and have them answer calls when the field guys call and say, hey, I need such and such gauge wire. Do we have any in the warehouse? Even if he sits there all day, it's in the long run, it's going to save you so much money to pay the guy to sit there and do that. And a lot of times, because work comp only pays them 2/3 of their normal salary, max $675 a week, you can pay them 2/3 of the salary while they're on light duty.
Oh, okay.
Now, again, leave that up to the owner because he may not want to make that guy mad. If it's an important guy, you may not want to do that to him. You can pay him full. I'm just saying you do have the ability to pay them 2/3 of the salary on light duty.
Okay. And you would
Correct.
also be paying them right away instead of that, because there's going to be that 7-day gap between when the workers' comp kicks in for salary coverage anyway.
Correct. So, and that's a good point, Adam. So let's say I get hurt and I do miss 3 days of work, totally, no light duty. I'm just out for 3 days. But when I come back on day 4 and I come back to light duty, because of that 7-day window, you still haven't had lost time.
Right.
So it's still a medical only claim.
So just because I'm curious now, so those signs out front, 500 something days without a lost time accident, even if somebody got injured and was out for 3 or 4 days, it's still not lost time because the insurance company didn't have to pay out.
They're still probably not counting that as lost time.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now, who knows? That factory, they may count any day off as lost time, but I would guarantee most are counting that 7-day window or whatever it is in their state. Yeah.
Interesting.
So the kind of the third major piece to this is having a deductible on your workers' compensation plan. In the state of Georgia, you can carry up to a $2,500 deductible on your workers' compensation. Georgia is what is considered a net state when it comes to workers' compensation deductible, meaning that any claim you have is reduced by your deductible, and then it's a net loss. So for example, if I carry a $2,500 deductible and I have a $5,000 work comp claim, I have to pay my $2,500 deductible. The only thing that's going to get reported to NCCI is the other $2,500 above my deductible.
Is the deductible per claim or for the year?
Per claim.
So if I had five different injuries in a year, I'm coming out of pocket $12,500, and whatever
Correct.
the balance of each of those is what gets reported.
Correct. So if I have a $2,500 deductible and I have a guy who cuts his hand, I send him to urgent care. They look at it, they stitch him up, give him an antibiotic, and it's $1,000. Work comp, you turn that into work comp. Work comp handles it. They follow up with the guy, make sure his hand doesn't get infected, all that kind of, you're taking your antibiotic, make sure it doesn't turn into something bigger. At the end of the day, it comes out to be $1,000 claim. Your work comp carrier handles it all, and they pay the provider, they pay the doctor, but then they invoice you for the amount up to the deductible. So they do, you don't have to, it's not like you have to handle the claim.
Okay.
Your work comp company's still handling that claim. Then they just invoice you for that $1,000.
And that doesn't get reported back up to NCCI.
Correct. So you have to
Okay.
pay the 1,000, but it's not counting against your mod. So you got to, if you add all these up, let's say you have a guy who gets hurt, it's the medical bills are $10,000. But he goes, you have a light duty program, so you don't have lost time paid, you don't have the indemnity part paid. So it's a medical only, it gets reduced by 70%. And then that $10,000 in medical, you pay a $2,500 deductible. So it's only $7,500 at the end of the day. At $7,500 is getting reduced by 70%. That $10,000 claim is now almost nothing when it goes on your experience, as opposed to a guy who has no understanding of how any of this works. He thinks this is what I pay insurance for. He doesn't have a return to work light duty. He doesn't have a deductible, and he thinks he's getting a good deal because he doesn't have a deductible on his. People think of it like they do their personal health insurance. Like, oh, the lower the deductible, the better. That's short-term thinking on work comp. So the guy who doesn't know how this works, his guy gets hurt. He sends him to the doctor. It's $10,000. His guy says, I can't come back and pull wire right now. My shoulder's messed up. He's out for 3 weeks while he's going to physical therapy. The work comp carrier pays the medical, then they pay the indemnity. So the medical part doesn't get reduced. The claim's bigger because they have to pay the lost time, the indemnity, which is really how the claims balloon, how they get big. And then he doesn't have a deductible, so it doesn't get reduced at all. So the guy who knows what's going on, what gets reported to NCCI might only be $750. It's not going to affect them negatively at all, probably, depending on how much payroll he has. The guy who has no clue how this works and just says, hey, whatever, just let the insurance company take care of it, that might be a $25,000 claim.
Wow.
And his mod's going to go up, and that claim stays with you on your NCCI mod calculation for 3 years.
Wow.
So he's going to be paying for that claim for 3 years in his work comp premium.
In a higher EMR.
Yes. So it's a compounding effect when it comes to this stuff.
Wow.
So to what you've kind of started off. So if I have 5 claims and I've got a $2,500 deductible, and let's say they're all $2,500 claims, I come out of pocket $12,000. Yeah, but that's $12,000 you've come out of pocket and it's over. If all those claims are hitting your mod and affecting it, you might be paying an additional $20,000 every year for 3 years.
Wow.
And if you never gain an understanding of how this works, you may be paying an extra $25,000 on your work comp every year forever, just because you have claims and you don't really understand how it works. So you don't have the controls in place, and it's just luck. Oh man, I had a good year. Good. My mod's going to drop a little bit next year. Oh, I had another bad year. My mod's going to go up. And most people think of it in terms of risk management, safety on the job. Well, we do what we can. We train our guys on ladder safety and all that. That's great. That's a huge part of it. But there are also these technical things and understanding how it actually works, that when you do have the claims, because you're going to have a claim. If you're a contractor, you're going to have claims eventually. Sure. So if you know how this works, you can mitigate it when it happens substantially.
Do you find that most small to mid-sized contractors lack this understanding of how workers' comp really works? They just think of it as something we have to have and just whatever, just sign up, get us a workers' comp policy and let's get to work? Or do most of them take the time to learn about this?
Hey, Adam, I just realized I've got to start driving, so I'm gonna carry you with me if that works.
Yeah, this will be fun. We're gonna put this on YouTube anyway.
Yeah. So no, most small guys do not know how this works, and even a lot of bigger guys don't know how it works. I mean, they may understand it a little bit, but they do not really understand it fully.
Gotcha. Well, I know you got to run. You're on the move. Why don't we wrap up here? And thanks again for all your time.